Welcome to another edition of Time About the Movies Flashback, and today we're flashing back to July 22nd, 1988, and we've got some pretty big movies on this particular episode, so let's go ahead and get right to it. We got 5 of them to cover, so let's start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin in Beverly Hills Cop director Martin Brest's follow-up, Midnight Run.
I love to travel by train.
Yeah, what do you think this is, a class trip?
A tough ex-cop.
Are you always this angry?
A sensitive criminal.
Oh, no, come on. Cigarettes are killers. Why are we running away from the FBI? Because I gotta bring it back myself, otherwise I won't get my money.
I can't fly. I also suffer from acrophobia and claustrophobia.
I'll tell you what, if you don't cooperate, you're gonna suffer from fistophobia.
They're seeing America the hard way.
Why would you eat that?
At gunpoint.
What did you do before you did this? What qualified you for this? He's gay. No, get it. He's trying. Of course he's gay.
Robert De Niro.
It is truly in your best interest to just relax.
I'm totally relaxed. Charles Grodin.
$2, that's all you're gonna leave? That's 15%. That's 13%. These people depend on tips for a living.
From the director of Beverly Hills Cop, Midnight Run.
So Robert De Niro plays a bounty hunter who's set to find and return a bail jumper and former mafia accountant played by Charles Grodin. The FBI has no success in locating the Duke, and which is Charles Grodin's character, so when Jack finds him in next to no time, they are a little embarrassed, and in order to collect the $100,000 fee, Jack must take the Duke from New York to Los Angeles himself. However, the Mafia and FBI have other ideas, as does another rival bounty hunter played by John Astin. On their long cross-country trip to L.A., the two get to know each other and they build a strange friendship. We've seen movies like this done before. 48 Hours and Lethal Weapon are probably the two biggest ones coming from this particular decade. But it's weird how this one stands out on its own on many different accounts, because this could have easily been considered a knockoff of those other movies we talked about, 48 Hours and, Lethal Weapon. But it's done very well, and it works well because you really get a really interesting connection between Robert De Niro and Charles Grodin. Charles Grodin's character is very neurotic in a way. Like he has the ability to fake panic attacks, and you can tell he has had some real panic attacks in his life. Like you could tell that he really plays his part, but he also is kind of seen as kind of a normal person in a way too. At the same time, it's a very mixed bag of a mixed interesting connection between the two, and it just works really well because you can buy into their chemistry really well. You can tell that these two would become friends as the movie goes on, and it's not being forced onto you like some of the more notoriously bad versions of these type of storylines. But Yaphet Kotto, John Astin, Dennis Farina, Joe Pantoliano, Philip Baker Hall, phenomenal cast of this movie, written by George Gallo and directed by Martin Brest, who has proven to be a great director over the time. We talked about Sense of Woman, and of course he did Beverly Hills Cop. Not much more to say about that one, but the movie's just funny, man. You really do get into their connection, the chemistry between the two. And De Niro and Grodin work off each other very well and lead to a lot of really good, funny dialogue between the two of them. The action sequences are very good, too. And like I said, it's not trying to be just another rip-off of 48 Hours or Lethal Weapon. It's trying to be very much its own thing. And it succeeds for the most part. In fact, it actually led to a couple of made-for-TV sequels with, of all people, Christopher McDonald, the bad guy from Happy Gilmore, in the main. Was it Charles Grodin's character? I think it was. Yeah, Jack Walsh. Like I've never seen the sequel. I've never seen those sequels, but just the fact that they got Christopher McDonald to play them in those series of films seems like it could. It seems like it's a logical decision. Those movies probably are not that great in general, but I don't know. I might check them out one day just to see if they do hold up in a way. I mean, why not? But like I said, this movie works mostly because of what De Niro and Grodin bring to the picture. They know that it's trying to be its own thing. It's unlike trying to be a knockoff. It's just working for the most part all the way through, and it's just a ton of fun. Really great acting, really great comedy, really great writing, really great action. Just a really fun movie. I really enjoy this one a lot. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie. It's the return of Pee Wee Herman in Big Top Pee Wee.
He's back. Oh, still the rebel. Still the loner. Still the legend. Pee Wee Herman.
That's my name, mate. Don't wear it out.
Big Top Pee Wee. Rated PG. Coming at you Friday, July 22nd.
So this is, of course, a sequel to Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and actually came 2 years after Pee-wee made the jump to Saturday Morning with Pee-wee's Playhouse. And both are not connected to this whatsoever. It's basically a standalone sequel where you have Pee-wee Herman, basically a simple farmer living quietly in a small town, but after a big storm blows through, a circus ends up on his farm. So he lets the circus stay on his farm for a while, and the circus decides to put on a show with one lovable star. That is, of course, Pee-wee. And Pee-wee also gets into kind of a love triangle, too. He has his fiancée, Winnie, who's the local school teacher, and this mysterious loner, Gina, played by Valeria Golino from Hot Shots, as the circus's attractive trapeze artist. And the outcome of the subplot is somewhat unexpected. And when I say somewhat unexpected, I mean, man, this does not feel like a Pee-wee Herman, the Pee-wee Herman that we know from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, or even the Pee-wee Herman TV show, Pee-wee's Playhouse. And it's probably one of the things that really hurts against the movie, because there are definitely those times when you feel like it's definitely showing a lot of what made Pee-wee's Big Adventure so special. But man, when they made the jump to Paramount, you can definitely tell there was something real. They did not know where to go with this, because there were so many different things about this movie that just feel off for a Pee-wee Herman adventure. Pee-wee's very creepy in this, like in terms of like he's very horny, like I guess maybe because like he's grown up since the last movie, maybe, but at the same time, the way he deals with the relationships between Valeria Golino and Penelope Ann Miller, who plays the teacher, it's off, I will say that. And it also doesn't help that the movie is contained to just this one area. The great thing about Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and then what happened with Pee-wee's Big Holiday, was that he'd go to different places, and he'd have all these different people around him who would just accept what he's doing. But in this movie, it really does feel like that everyone in this town does not accept him except the circus, and even then, they're really just pushing it with him, and it's just like, it definitely feels off. This is directed by Randall Kleiser, who gave us great stuff like Flight of the Navigator, which also starred Paul Rubens. He also did Grease. He did The Blue Lagoon. We've talked about several of his movies on the regular time about the movie shows, such as White Fang and How I Blew Up the Kid. So, it's not that the director is bad on this level, but I definitely feel like that once the film went over to a different studio, and they basically had to kind of go with whatever the studio had to deal with, I feel like the film kind of lost a lot of its muster here. Is it a bad movie? No, not really. I mean, there are still some elements in there that are fun. I mean, like, I do like Valeria Golino a lot in this movie. I think she's very charming in this film. So is Penelope Ann Miller. And Paul Rubens has those moments in there where he can be really funny. And there are some very offbeat moments in here, but they are very few and far between. And it just really struggles because of the fact that, Pee-wee's stuck in this one general area, and he doesn't really have a whole lot to do because not a whole lot of people really like him in this movie, and I think it really does kind of hurt the muster and flow of the film in general. Like, you feel like there could be so much more with this, and it's just not there. It's a real letdown of a movie the more I think about it, and it's a shame because this is right at the peak when Pee-wee Herman was at the top of his game, and only a couple of years from now, he wouldn't be there anymore. I mean, of course, what happened with Paul Rubens in real life, but that's a whole nother story altogether. But this is just kind of a letdown overall. I am glad that they kind of turned it around with Pee-wee's Big Adventure. It's about 20 years later. But other than that, though, there's not really much to take away from Big Top Pee-wee. Nor is there much to take away from our next movie, which is Caddyshack II.
Ready to rumble!
The shack is back.
That was in the upper deck. Oh, that was gone.
Good manners are back.
Have you ever seen a crisp $50 bill?
Good times are back.
Woo! Bingo!
Will you please suck out the poison for me?
Caddyshack II.
Is there any money in it for me?
Starts Friday at a theater near you.
So, Caddyshack 2 is the sequel that nobody was asking for, and yet we still got it anyway. And you have Jackie Mason starring in this in the leading role, in a role that I guess was intended for Rodney Dangerfield, his character from the last movie, and he turned that down, even though they got the same director that Dangerfield worked on with Back to School. But you have him as a wealthy and widowed real estate developer who goes up against Bushwood Country Club snobbish president played by Robert Stack in a golfing tournament. And you also have different characters, a lot of notable names in here. Diane Cannon, Jonathan Silverman, Marshall Warfield, Randy Quaid, Chevy Chase, and Dan Aykroyd are in this movie. But really, you could tell right from the get-go where the movie falls apart. That trailer alone kind of sets the tone for what you're in for here. And it's a film that has been heavily panned by a lot of people. I mean, to say what's wrong with this movie, I'd be here all day. Like, if you want my advice, go watch the Cinema Snob's review of Caddyshack II, because he perfectly summed up everything that's wrong with this movie in that review alone. But I will say one positive thing about this movie. And that's that the soundtrack for this movie is pretty friggin' amazing. Like, you know, Kenny Loggins' Nobody's Fool in this movie is probably one of the best underrated movie songs you'll ever hear. That, and also Turn on the Beatbox from Earth, Wind & Fire. I mean, this has a really good soundtrack for a movie that's as bad as this is. I mean, this is just it's like the producers of this movie saw the original Caddyshack and said, we need to make this for kids. We need to dumb this down to kids. I mean, like, it's really dumbed down. There are so many moments in this movie where it's just like, what are you doing? Like, there's a horse. There's this thing where they're riding horses, and for no reason, a horse will just randomly fart out of nowhere because fart jokes for absolutely no reason. The gopher doesn't really have a whole lot to do in this movie. Dan Aykroyd's just replaying Bill Murray's character from the last movie. But if there's any positive thing I could take from this, is that at least Chevy Chase probably has some of the funnier moments in the movie, and he's not even trying all that much, but he's the one that's really just carrying the load of this film, and it just doesn't work in the end. It feels like a movie that should have been a direct-to-TV sequel, like something on the ABC Sunday Night Movie or the NBC Sunday Night Movie around this time, but not for the big screen. The only things I could say that are positive: Chevy Chase, that killer soundtrack, and that's pretty much it. Caddyshack 2, yeah, like I said, go watch the Cinema Snob review. He perfectly summed up everything that's wrong with this movie. I think he does it better than I could, but but then again, he could do that for a number of movies that we talk about on here. But with that said, let us move on to our next movie, and that is Mr. North.
Mr. North is a story of romance with a special touch.
So in this movie, Anthony Edwards plays Mr. North, a stranger to a small but wealthy Rhode Island town, and quickly has rumors starting about him that he has the power to heal people's ailments. The rumors are magnified by his tendency to collect negative charges and give shocks to anyone he touches. In his adventures, he befriends an old man who is a shut-in and helps him rediscover the world. The interesting thing you might have noticed is that this is directed by Danny Huston, who, of course, Danny Huston, nowadays we know who he is because he's been involved in such films as 21 Grams, Birth, The Aviator, all the way up to Wonder Woman, Game Night. But back then, he wasn't as well... I don't think he was probably known, but he wasn't as well known as the rest of his family because, of course, he's the family with John Huston, who's the producer of this, and then also stars Angelica Houston, and Danny Huston's future wife, Virginia Madsen, is also in the film, as well as Allegra Houston, and it was actually released a year after Jack Huston died, and it marked the final film that he wrote, because he also co-wrote this. And it's a very interesting concept. It's a film that I think has a lot of ideas to it that could be very interesting, but I think the biggest problem with it is it doesn't really know what type of a balance it wants to have. Does it want to be more comedic? Does it want to be more dramatic? An idea like this feels like it wants to go straight up for some more comedic elements to it, but I don't know. I don't know if Huston probably saw the Witches of Eastwick and saw how that worked, and maybe wanted to do something similar to that. Maybe, because there are a little bit of some Witches of Eastwick elements here. It's not as dark as Witches of Eastwick is, but it definitely has a lot of those same ideas to it. But it's not a bad movie per se. It's got some good casting. Edwards is very good in here. Robert Mitchum, Lauren Bacall, Harry Dean Stanton, Mary Stuart Masterson, David Warner, Virginia Madsen, like I said. It's got some good people in there, some good ideas in general, but like I said, I think it's the tone that really makes this movie not as good as I think it wants to be. Like, I feel like it doesn't really know what kind of a movie it wants to be. Does it want to be more of a comedic film? Does it want to be more of a dramatic film? It really doesn't know how to balance it out, and I think that really does hurt it in the long run. But interesting ideas to it, just not the right execution in terms of the tone it wants to take. So let's go ahead and take a look at our last film here, Ben Kingsley in Pascali's Island.
And Charles Dance. It's all over, Pascal. It's finished. In a film of exotic power. Pascali's Island. A new film by James Dearden, the author of Fatal Attraction.
So this takes place in 1908 and stars Ben Kingsley as a spy for the Sultan, who sends reports to Istanbul that nobody reads. His suspicions are aroused when a British archaeologist appears, who may not be quite what he seems. And when they say that this was written by the person that did Fatal Attraction, they're talking about the fact that he wrote the screenplay for Fatal Attraction, which I pretty much just told you that right there. I thought it was when he said that, I thought he was saying something like, based off the book of that gave us Fatal Attraction. But no, he wrote Fatal Attraction, which definitely seems like a different tone for this type of film. I mean, this feels like it feels very pretentious, but then again, I haven't seen the movie, but from the reviews I've seen from it, it does feel like a very slow burn film, a film that's trying to be like an Oscar baitish type of film, kind of a Merchant Ivory without having Merchant Ivory's name attached to it. But back then Ben Kingsley didn't choose a lot of bad movies, as far as I know. Got Charles Dance, got Helen Mirren involved there, so there might be something to it in general. But I haven't seen it in full to really get a complete grasp of it, honestly. But it could be good. I mean, I'm not saying too much more about that because I haven't seen it, so like I said, could be good, but I don't know too much about it. So with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies Flashback. We'll flash back to July 15th on the next episode, and we've got some big movies on this one as well. Clint Eastwood's last appearance as Dirty Harry with the Dead Pool. My favorite movie of all time, Bambi, which, because I'm in the middle of doing my top 30 favorite movies on the Reviewing Network talks about, I'll try to shorten that down as much as I can, because I want to save that for the longer form review that I do there. Or you can go check out some of the other videos I've done about talking about that movie. But Bambi came out as a re-release that weekend, so we'll talk about that briefly. Bruce Willis stars in Die Hard that got a limited release this weekend. And also A Fish Called Wanda, one of the best comedies of the 80s. And also A Killing Affair. So we got 5 movies to look at. Most of them memorable films in general. We'll delve into all of those. We'll do that on the next episode. But until then, thank you so much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the place on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So with that said, I will see you guys next week for the next episode. So until then, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.